Captain Jake Morrison stood in front of the big screen on his ship, the USS Defiance. The blue light from the hologram made his face look pale. He had been staring at the same message for 2 hours now. The words seemed to burn into his mind. Every time he read them, the message was from something called the hegemony. They were aliens, and they were not happy with humans. The message was simple and scary. All human colonies outside the solar system had to be abandoned in 30 days. If humans did not leave, the aliens would destroy everything. Lisa Hayes walked up next to Morrison. She was his second in command and one of the smartest officers on the ship. Her tablet was full of reports about the alien fleet. The numbers were not good for humans. "Captain, I have been looking at their ships," Lisa said. Her voice was quiet, like she was afraid someone might hear. "They have 12 different alien races working together. Their weapons can destroy whole planets. Their shields can stop nuclear bombs like they are toys." Morrison nodded but did not take his eyes off the message. He had read the intelligence reports too. The hegemony had been around for thousands of years. They controlled most of the galaxy. When younger races tried to expand too far, the hegemony stopped them. They did not just win battles. They erased entire civilizations from existence. Dr. Paul Grant entered the bridge carrying a thick file. He was the ship's expert on alien behavior. For months, he had been studying everything humans knew about the hegemony. What he found was worse than anyone expected. "Captain, you need to see this," Paul said. He opened his file and pulled out photos of dead worlds. These planets used to have intelligent life. The species that lived there gave up their colonies when the hegemony demanded it. They thought they would be safe if they obeyed. Morrison finally looked away from the message. What happened to them? The hegemony absorbed them slowly. First, they took their best scientists and engineers. Then they moved whole populations to work in their factories and mines. Within 50 years, these species stopped existing as independent cultures. Their languages died. Their traditions were forgotten. They became slaves. Lisa felt her stomach turn cold. "So if we give up our colonies, we buy maybe 20 years before they come for Earth itself," Paul finished. "The hegemony does not want to share the galaxy. They want to own it completely." Meanwhile, on Earth, President Maria Santos was having the worst day of her presidency. The emergency meeting of the United Earth Council had been going for 6 hours. Representatives from every nation on Earth were arguing about what to do. The room was hot and filled with angry voices. General Robert Kane slammed his hand on the table. He was an old soldier who had fought in 3 wars on Earth. His face was red with anger. "We cannot run away like scared children. If we abandon our colonies, we tell the whole galaxy that humans are weak. We tell them that we will give up everything if they threaten us enough." Senator Helen Clark from the European Union disagreed. She stood up and pointed at the data on the main screen. "General Kane, look at these numbers. They have technology we cannot even understand. Their smallest ships are bigger than our largest ones. We have 200 ships total. They have millions. This is not about being brave. This is about being smart enough to survive." "Survive as what?" General Kane shot back. "As slaves?" "The reports are clear. Species that submit to the hegemony disappear piece by piece. We might live longer if we surrender, but we will not live as humans." President Santos rubbed her temples. She felt a headache coming on. The weight of the decision was crushing. Whatever choice she made would affect every human alive and every human not yet born. Dr. Amy Foster, Earth's top expert on space colonization, raised her hand. "Madam President, I want to add something. Our colonies are not just mining stations and research posts. New Geneva has 3 million people. Kepler Station has 500,000. These are not numbers on a report. These are families, children, people who left Earth to build new lives among the stars." The room became quiet. Everyone knew she was right. The colonies were not just strategic assets, they were communities. They were proof that humans could thrive anywhere in the universe. Abandoning them meant abandoning everything that made humanity special. Morrison watched the Earth Council debate on his ship's communication screen. The vote was going to be close. He could see it in the faces of the representatives. Some looked terrified. Others looked angry. A few looked resigned to whatever fate was coming. The hegemony deadline was 28 days away. Every human colony was preparing for the worst. Some colonists wanted to evacuate. Others refused to leave their homes. Military ships were moving into defensive positions, even though everyone knew it would not matter much against hegemony technology. Lisa brought Morrison a cup of coffee. It was his fifth one today. What do you think they will decide? She asked. Morrison took a sip and watched the politicians on the screen. I think they will surprise everyone, including themselves. How? Humans are stubborn. We always have been. When someone tells us we cannot do something, we usually try to prove them wrong, even when it is stupid to try. The vote came at midnight, Earth time. President Santos called for order in the chamber. The representatives cast their votes electronically. The numbers appeared on the big screen in front of everyone. The vote was 147 to 145, by the smallest possible margin. Humanity chose to stand its ground. President Santos stood up. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could see her hands shaking slightly. The United Earth Council has made its decision. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not surrender our right to exist among the stars. If the hegemony wants war, then war they shall have. Morrison turned off the communication screen. Around him, his crew was quiet. They all knew what this meant. In 28 days, the most powerful force in the galaxy would come to destroy them. Humans had just chosen to fight a war they could not win, but as Morrison looked at his crew, he saw something that made him proud. He saw determination. He saw courage. He saw the same stubborn spirit that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. The die was cast. Humanity would stand its ground. The attack came 3 days early. Linda Fox was drinking her morning coffee when the alarm started screaming across New Harvest Colony. She ran to the communication center where her staff was already working frantically at their stations. What is happening? Linda asked. She was the colony administrator and had been living on this planet for 5 years. New Harvest was humanity's newest colony in the Kepler 442 system. 2 million people called it home. Ships, ma'am, said Tom Miller, her chief communications officer. Huge ships. They just appeared out of nowhere. Linda looked at the main screen. The ships were massive, each one the size of a small city. They were dark and angular, like someone had carved them from black stone. There were 12 of them arranged in a perfect circle around the planet. Send an emergency message to Earth. Linda ordered, Tell them the hegemony is here. Tom's fingers flew over his keyboard. I'm trying, ma'am, but something is blocking our signals. The communication satellites are not responding. On the screen, the alien ships began to glow. Energy was building up in weapon ports along their hulls. Linda had seen the intelligence reports. She knew what was coming next. All citizens, this is Administrator Fox, she said into the planetary communication system. Take shelter immediately. Move to the underground bunkers? This is not a drill. But Linda knew the bunkers would not help. The hegemony weapons could crack planets open like eggs. She grabbed her personal communicator and sent one last message on an emergency frequency. It was the only channel that might get through. This is New Harvest Colony to any human ships in range. The hegemony fleet is here. They are not just attacking our defenses, they are sterilizing everything. Remember us. Remember what they did to us. The first beam hit the northern continent. Linda watched through the window as the sky turned white. The ground shook so hard that everyone in the communication center was thrown to the floor. When the light faded, the northern continent was gone. In its place was a lake of molten rock. Admiral Carl Stone was 12 hours away when New Harvest died. He commanded the Third Fleet from his flagship, the USS Vengeance. When Tom's emergency message reached him, he ordered maximum speed toward the Kepler system. All ships, battle stations, Admiral Stone announced. Prepare for engagement with hegemony forces. His fleet was small but modern, 20 destroyers, 8 cruisers, and 2 battleships. It was the most powerful human fleet ever assembled. Against 12 hegemony dreadnoughts, it would be like throwing rocks at tanks. When they arrived at Kepler 442, the alien ships were gone. The planet below was a ball of cooling magma. Nothing could have survived what happened there. Admiral Stone stared at the dead world and felt something break inside his chest. "Sir," said Commander Rick Davis from the sensor station, "I'm picking up a signal from the orbital research station. It's still intact." The research station was small and hidden behind one of the planet's moons. Somehow, the hegemony had missed it. Admiral Stone sent a shuttle to investigate Dr. Susan. Walsh was the only person left alive on the station. She had been recording everything when the attack began. Her hands were still shaking when Admiral Stone's people found her. "They did not just destroy the planet," Susan told the Admiral. "They were precise about it. Look at these readings." She showed him her data. The hegemony weapons had carved through the planet's crust with surgical precision. They had destroyed all life and most of the surface, but they had left the valuable mineral deposits untouched. The planet's core was full of rare metals that could be mined later. This was not random destruction, Admiral Stone realized. This was resource extraction. They killed 2 million people to prepare a mining site. Back on Earth, the footage from Susan's recordings spread across every news network. People watched their fellow humans die in seconds. They saw children running for shelters that could not protect them. They saw cities vanish in flashes of white light. The reaction was immediate and fierce. Protests demanding revenge filled every major city on Earth. Military recruitment centers had lines stretching for blocks. People who had never held weapons were demanding to join the fight. Captain Danny Porter was leading a small reconnaissance fleet in the Vega system when he received new orders. His job was to find the next hegemony target and get there first. Intelligence suggested the aliens would hit New Geneva next. New Geneva was different from New Harvest. It was older and better defended. 3 million people lived there, and they had been preparing for war since the ultimatum was delivered. But preparation would not be enough against hegemony technology. Porter's fleet included something special. The USS Phoenix was humanity's first ship built with reverse-engineered alien technology. Scientists had been studying captured hegemony equipment for months. The Phoenix was their first attempt to use what they had learned. "Captain Porter," said Lieutenant Jane Morris from the Phoenix's engineering section, "the new weapons are ready for testing. We have no idea if they will work against real hegemony shields." "Then we will find out the hard way," Porter replied. The plan was simple but desperate. When the hegemony fleet arrived at New Geneva, they would find humans ready to fight back. It would not be another massacre. This time, humanity would make the aliens pay for every life they took. Porter watched the deep space sensors as his fleet took position around New Geneva. The colonists were evacuating to underground shelters, but many refused to leave. They wanted to fight. Farmers and miners were picking up rifles. Engineers were rigging bombs. Teachers were learning to operate anti-aircraft guns. "Sir," said Ensign Bill Clark from the communication station, "New Geneva is ready. All civilian shelters are sealed. Defense batteries are online. The colony militia is in position." Porter nodded. In his career, he had fought pirates and smugglers. He had never faced anything like the hegemony. But he had seen what they did to New Harvest. That was enough to make him very angry. "All ships, prepare for battle," Porter ordered. "Remember New Harvest? Remember what we are fighting for?" The deep space sensors detected the hegemony fleet 6 hours before they arrived. 12 massive dreadnoughts, identical to the ones that had destroyed New Harvest. They came out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, confident and unhurried. Porter looked at his small fleet. 15 ships against 12 alien monsters. The odds were terrible, but humans had faced bad odds before. "This is Captain Porter to all ships," he said. "Today we find out what humans are really made Oh. The hegemony fleet moved toward New Geneva like they owned the galaxy. Their 12 massive ships stayed in perfect formation, just like they had done thousands of times before. They expected another easy victory against primitive humans. Commander. Tony Martinez watched them approach from the bridge of the USS Phoenix. The new human ship looked small next to the alien dreadnoughts, but it carried humanity's hopes for revenge. Tony had volunteered for this mission knowing he might not survive it. Distance to enemy fleet? Tony asked. 2 million kilometers and closing, reported Sergeant Amy Carter from the sensor station. They are maintaining standard attack formation. Admiral. Stone was commanding the defense from his flagship USS Vengeance. He had 15 ships against 12 alien monsters. The math was simple and brutal. Normally, one hegemony ship could destroy 50 human vessels. But Admiral Stone had a plan that the aliens would never expect. All ships, this is Admiral Stone, he announced on the fleet communication channel. Prepare for final gambit protocol. Every captain confirmed ready status. One by one, the human captains responded. Captain Porter on the USS Lightning. Captain Barnes on the USS Thunder. Captain Kelly on the USS Storm, 15 brave souls ready to sacrifice everything for one chance at victory. The final gambit protocol was Admiral Stone's desperate idea. Every human ship would overload their fusion reactors beyond safe limits. When the reactors reached critical mass, the ships would ram directly into the alien fleet. The resulting explosions would be powerful enough to crack moons. Sir, said Lieutenant Bob Hayes from the engineering section, all reactors are ready for overload sequence. Once we start, we will have maybe 10 minutes before the reactors explode. Admiral Stone nodded. 10 minutes to cover 2 million kilometers and hit the enemy ships. It would require perfect timing and a lot of luck. On New Geneva below, the colonists watched the battle through underground viewing stations. Mary Watson hugged her 2 children as they stared at the screens. She had moved to New Geneva 5 years ago to give her family a better life among the stars. Now she watched human ships prepare to die protecting them. Mommy, will the bad aliens hurt us? Asked her daughter Lucy. Mary did not know what to say. The underground shelters were strong, but hegemony weapons could burn through entire planets. If the human fleet failed, nothing would save them. The alien ships reached weapons range first. 12 energy beams reached across space toward the human fleet. The USS Thunder took a direct hit and exploded instantly. Captain Barnes and his crew of 200 died in seconds. Thunder is gone, reported Sergeant Carter. Enemy weapons are charging for second volley. Admiral Stone gave the order. All ships begin reactor overload. Execute final gambit protocol. Across the human fleet, fusion reactors pushed past every safety limit. Warning alarms screamed on every bridge. Red lights flashed as radiation levels climbed toward lethal levels. The ships began to glow as excess energy leaked from their hulls. Commander Martinez felt the Phoenix shake as her reactor climbed toward critical mass. The deck plates were getting hot under his feet. The air tasted like metal and electricity. All power to engines, Tony ordered. Maximum acceleration toward the enemy flagship. The human fleet charged directly at the hegemony formation. It was not a normal battle tactic. Most space combat involved long-range weapons and careful maneuvering. No sane captain would fly directly into enemy guns, but the aliens had never fought insane opponents before. The hegemony fleet commander, a creature called Supreme Navigator, Vorth, watched the human ships accelerate toward his formation. His species had conquered 47 worlds using superior technology and overwhelming firepower. This was the first time enemies had charged directly at his guns. Increase firing rate, Vorth ordered his weapons officers. Destroy the primitive ships before they reach effective range. The alien weapons fired again and again. The USS Lightning exploded. The USS Storm was cut in half. The USS Ranger vanished in a ball of plasma. But the remaining human ships kept coming, their reactors glowing brighter with each passing second. Sir, reported Navigator Vorth's tactical officer, the human ships are showing massive energy readings. Their power cores are approaching critical overload. For the first time in his long military career, Navigator Vorth felt something like fear. The humans were not trying to win a normal battle. They were turning their ships into bombs. "All ships, emergency withdrawal," Vorth ordered. "Begin faster than light. Jump sequence immediately." But it was too late. The human ships had closed to point-blank range. Admiral Stone's voice came over the communication channel one last time. "Remember us. Remember New Harvest. Remember that humans do not surrender." The USS Vengeance rammed directly into the Hegemony flagship. Her overloaded reactor exploded with the force of a small star. The alien dreadnought cracked in half and died in nuclear fire. Commander Martinez guided the USS Phoenix into the second-largest enemy ship. As his reactor went critical, he thought about his wife back on Earth. He hoped she would understand why he had to do this, one by one, the human. Ships found their targets. Not all of them made it through the alien defensive fire, but enough survived to complete their mission. When the explosion stopped, 11 of the 12 Hegemony ships were destroyed. The last alien vessel was badly damaged and limping away. At sublight speed, the human fleet was gone. Admiral Stone and 14 other captains had died with their ships. But New Geneva was safe, and the galaxy had learned something important about humans. Chief Engineer Kate Brooks led the salvage operation from a rescue ship that arrived 3 days later. The wreckage field contained the largest collection of intact hegemony technology ever captured by humans. "Look at this," Kate told her team as they examined an alien power core. "Their energy systems are completely different from ours. We might be able to reverse engineer their faster-than-light drives." More importantly, the salvage teams found an alien communication array that was still partially functional. Dr. Jerry Murphy, the fleet's intelligence officer, worked for days to crack the alien encryption codes. "Captain Brooks, you need to hear this," Jerry said when he finally succeeded. He played a recording of Hegemony military communications. The alien voices were translated by computer, but the panic was clear in every word. Emergency councils were being called. Ancient protocols were being activated. The Hegemony leadership was in chaos. "In 3,000 years of expansion, we have never lost a task force to primitives," one alien commander reported. "The humans have done something impossible. They have broken our image of invincibility." Kate smiled as she listened to the recordings. The Battle of New Geneva had cost humanity dearly, but it had given them something more valuable than ships or weapons. It had given them hope. Dr. Elizabeth Murphy could not sleep. For 3 weeks, she had been studying the alien communications captured after the Battle of New Geneva. The more she learned, the more worried she became. The Hegemony was talking about something called the Convergence Protocol, and they were scared. Elizabeth was Earth's best expert on alien archaeology. She had spent her career studying ruins found on distant worlds. Most of them were millions of years old and belonged to civilizations that had died long before humans learned to make fire. "Director Murphy," said her assistant Kevin Ross as he entered her laboratory, "I found more references to the first grave in the alien databases. Look at this." Kevin showed her a star map from the Hegemony files. One system was marked with symbols that the computer could not translate. According to the data, no alien ship had visited that system for over 2,000 years. It was completely forbidden. "Why would they avoid an entire star system?" Elizabeth asked. "Maybe because something dangerous lives there," Kevin suggested. "Or maybe because something dangerous died there." Fleet Admiral Chris Taylor had been promoted after Admiral Stone's heroic sacrifice at New Geneva. He was younger than most admirals, but the war was forcing everyone to grow up fast. When Elizabeth brought him the star maps, he knew they had found their next target. "Dr. Murphy, are you sure about this?" Admiral Taylor asked. They were meeting in the secure briefing room aboard the USS Liberty, humanity's new flagship. "You want us to fly into alien Forbidden's territory to investigate ancient ruins?" "Admiral, the Hegemony calls this place the first grave," Elizabeth explained. "Every time they mention it in their communications, they sound afraid. Whatever is there, it scares them more than we do. Admiral Taylor studied the star charts. The system was deep in hegemony space, surrounded by enemy fleets. Getting there would require using captured alien ships to disguise human crews. It was dangerous and probably stupid. "How many ships do you need?" he asked. "Just one. A small research vessel with a good crew." Admiral Taylor assigned Captain Helen Garcia to lead the mission. She was one of the best stealth pilots in the human fleet. Her ship, the USS Explorer, was disguised to look like a hegemony science vessel. The journey to the first grave took 2 weeks. Captain Garcia's crew spoke very little during the trip. They all knew they were flying deeper into enemy territory than any human had ever gone before. "Approaching the target system," reported Navigator Tim Brooks. "Sensors are picking up massive structures around the fourth planet. What they found was beyond anything they had imagined. The fourth planet was covered with ruins that stretched from pole to pole. Ancient cities built from materials that gleamed like starlight, towers that reached up into space, and everywhere the remains of technology that made hegemony science look primitive." "Captain," said Dr. Elizabeth Murphy, who had insisted on coming along, "these ruins are at least 50,000 years old. Maybe older. This civilization was building starships when humans were still living in caves." As the explorer moved closer to the planet, something unexpected happened. Ancient defense systems that had been sleeping for millennia began to wake up. Massive weapons platforms powered up around the planet. Energy shields activated around the ruins. "Captain, we should leave," said Lieutenant Mark Johnson from the weapons station. "Those defense systems could vaporize us." But the weapons did not fire. Instead, they sent a message. The transmission came in perfect English, as if the ancient systems had been waiting for humans to arrive. "Welcome, inheritors," the message said. "I am the architect. I have been waiting for your return." Captain Garcia ordered the ship to land at the coordinates the architect provided. The landing site was inside a massive structure near the planet's equator. It was big enough to hold 1,000 ships, but the Explorer was alone in the vast chamber. Dr. Murphy led the exploration team into the ancient facility. The walls were covered with symbols that seemed to move and change as they watched. The air itself felt alive with energy. They found the architect in the heart of the complex. It was not a living creature, but an artificial intelligence built into the structure itself. When it spoke, holographic images appeared to illustrate its words. "You are the species that defeated a hegemony task force through pure determination," the architect said. "This makes you the first to pass the test in over 3,000 years." "What test?" Dr. Murphy asked. "The test of worthiness. The hegemony is not a natural empire. They are a mechanism created by my builders to identify species strong enough to inherit our legacy. Most species either submit immediately or are destroyed in their first battle. Only those who win against impossible odds prove they have the strength to carry our burden." The holographic images showed the history of the galaxy. The architect's builders had been the first civilization to achieve true mastery over space and time. They had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, but eventually they had grown tired of physical existence and ascended to higher dimensions. Before leaving, they had created the hegemony to test younger species. It was a harsh but effective method of finding their replacement. "Your victory at New Geneva activated ancient protocols," the architect explained. "The hegemony leadership knows what this means. They are preparing to reveal their true strength. Not 12 species, but over 200. Not thousands of ships, but millions." Dr. Murphy felt cold fear in her stomach. "How are we supposed to fight millions of ships?" "By accepting what my builders left behind." The architect showed them vast chambers filled with technology beyond human understanding. Weapons that could crack planets with a single shot. Ships that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Energy sources that drew power directly from the fundamental forces of the universe. "This technology will transform your species," the architect warned. Previous inheritors became immortal, but they lost their connection to biological life. Eventually, they followed my builders into the higher dimensions, leaving behind only automated systems to continue the test. Captain Garcia studied the ancient weapons with professional interest. What happens if we refuse the inheritance? Then you face the hegemony's full might with only conventional technology. The odds of survival are essentially zero. Dr. Murphy walked through the halls of impossible science. She saw machines that could reshape matter at the atomic level, computers that could simulate entire universes, weapons that could stop time itself. There has to be another choice, she said. Something between accepting everything and accepting. Nothing. The architect's voice became very serious. Partial inheritance has been attempted before. Most species that tried it were driven insane by technologies they could not fully understand. Others destroyed themselves in civil wars over who should control the ancient knowledge. What if we only take what we need to survive? Captain Garcia asked. Just enough to defeat the hegemony, then seal the rest away until we are ready for. That is the most dangerous path of all, the architect replied. But if you can walk it successfully, you will achieve something no species has ever accomplished. True freedom among the stars with your essential nature intact. Dr. Murphy made her decision. We need to take this information back to Earth. Humanity has to choose its own path forward. As the explorer prepared to leave the first grave, the architect gave them one final warning. Your test is not over. The hegemony was only the beginning. If you survive them with your humanity intact, you will face the true guardians of the galaxy. Forces that destroyed my builders and drove them from physical existence. Captain Garcia felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of forces? The Watchers, the Void Singers, the Eternal Machines. Enemies that make the hegemony look like children playing with toys. The explorer left the ancient system carrying the most important cargo in human history. The choice that awaited humanity would determine not just their survival, but their very nature as a species. The real war was about to begin. President Maria Santos stood before the largest gathering in human history. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the global assembly hall. Billions more watched on screens around the world and across the colonies. The decision they made today would change humanity forever. Dr. Elizabeth Murphy had spent 3 days explaining what they found at the first grave, the ancient technology, the truth about the hegemony, the choice that lay before them. Now the debate was about to begin. General Patricia Wells spoke first. She was a tough soldier who had fought in the defense of New Geneva. Her uniform still bore scorch marks from the battle. Citizens of Earth, General Wells said, we face a simple choice. Accept the ancient inheritance and become the galaxy's new guardians, or face the hegemony's full strength with primitive weapons. The enemy has revealed their true numbers. 200 species, millions of ships. They can destroy entire star systems. She activated a holographic display showing hegemony fleet movements. The numbers were terrifying. Every day, more alien. Ships were gathering at staging areas throughout the galaxy. They were preparing for a war of total extermination. If we refuse the ancient technology, humanity will be extinct within a year, General Wells concluded. Our children will never see another sunrise. Our species will be forgotten like dust in the wind, Dr. Murphy stood up to respond. She had spent her life studying dead civilizations, and she knew what happened to species that lost their essential nature. General Wells is right about the military situation, Dr. Murphy admitted, but she is wrong about our choices. The previous inheritors accepted the ancient technology and became something else. They gained immortality but lost their humanity. Within a few thousand years, they abandoned physical existence entirely. She showed images from the ancient databases. Species that had accepted the inheritance and gradually transformed into beings of pure energy. Their old cultures forgotten, their biological heritage erased. Is survival worth anything if we stop being human? Dr. Murphy asked. If we accept full inheritance, our children might live forever, but they will not be our children anymore. Colonel Ray Johnson had a different idea. He commanded the fleet of captured hegemony ships that humanity had been using for reconnaissance missions. He had seen both human determination and alien technology up close. "There is a third option," Colonel Johnson said. "We take only what we need from the ancient vaults. Weapons to defeat the hegemony, ships to protect our colonies. But we leave the transformative technology alone until we understand it better." President Santos knew this was the most dangerous choice. The architect had warned them about partial inheritance. Most species that tried it had been destroyed by technologies they could not control. "Colonel Johnson, the architect called this the path to madness," President Santos said. "Species have started civil wars over who should control ancient weapons. Others have accidentally destroyed themselves with technology they did not understand." But some succeeded," Colonel Johnson replied. "The architect said if we can walk this path successfully, we will achieve true freedom. Freedom to remain human while still having the power to defend ourselves." The debate continued for hours. Scientists argued about the risks of using technology they did not fully understand. Military leaders pointed out that conventional weapons could not stop the coming hegemony invasion. Philosophers wondered if humanity would still be human after. Gaining godlike power, finally, President Santos called for the vote. It was the most important decision in human history. Accept full inheritance and lose their humanity. Refuse it and face extinction. Or try the dangerous middle path and risk destroying themselves. The vote was closer than anyone expected. When the final numbers appeared on the main screen, there was complete silence in the assembly hall. The result was 289 votes for partial inheritance, 288 votes for full acceptance, and 287 votes for refusal. By a margin of 1 vote, humanity chose the hardest path. President Santos felt the weight of the decision settle on her shoulders. "The Global Assembly has spoken. We will take what we need from the ancient inheritance while preserving our essential humanity. May God help us all." The architect's response came within hours. The ancient intelligence had been monitoring human communications since their visit to the first grave. Its voice reached every human device capable of receiving transmissions. "You have chosen the path of greatest difficulty," the architect said. "The hegemony was merely your entrance exam. Now begins your true test. The forces that destroyed my builders are stirring. They have sensed the awakening of ancient technology and they are coming." Images flooded human communication networks. Things that existed between dimensions. Machines that consumed entire star clusters. Entities that sang reality apart with impossible music. The watchers see through 1,000,000,000 eyes across space and time. The void singers remake matter and energy according to their alien will. The eternal machines exist only to consume and convert all biological life into mechanical perfection. Admiral Taylor felt his blood turn cold as he studied the images. The hegemony had seemed like an impossible enemy, but these new threats made them look like children playing with toy soldiers. "These are the true guardians of the galaxy," the architect continued. "They allowed my builders to test younger species because it served their purposes. But active use of our technology will bring them here directly." Colonel Johnson was already selecting teams to retrieve weapons from the first grave. The ancient vaults contained everything humanity needed to defeat the hegemony, but using those weapons would attract far worse enemies. Dr. Murphy worked with human engineers to design safeguards for the alien technology. They needed to be able to use ancient weapons without being changed by them. It was like trying to hold lightning without being burned. The first ancient weapons arrived at human military bases within days. Energy cannons that could punch through hegemony shields. Alma that could survive direct hits from planet-cracking weapons. Ships that could travel faster than anything in the galaxy. But with the new technology came new responsibilities. Human crews had to learn to think like ancient beings while remaining essentially human. It was a balance that had driven other species insane. The hegemony invasion began exactly as the architect predicted. 200 species working together. Millions of ships advancing on human colonies from every direction. They came expecting to face primitive weapons and desperate courage. Instead, they met humans armed with technology from the dawn of galactic civilization. The first battle was at the Centauri system. Captain Sandra Lewis commanded a small human fleet equipped with ancient weapons. When the Hegemony Task Force arrived, they found humans who could fight as equals. "All ships, open fire," Captain Lewis ordered. Ancient energy beams reached across space and shattered Hegemony shields like paper. For the first time in 3,000 years, the alien empire faced enemies who could match their technology, but even as humanity won its first real victories against the hegemony, deep space sensors detected something worse approaching from the void between galaxies. The Watchers had noticed the disturbance. They were coming to investigate. Admiral Taylor gathered his fleet commanders for an emergency briefing. "The hegemony was our training exercise. The real war starts now." As ancient weapons merged with human innovation, Earth's children prepared for conflicts that would span centuries. They had stood their ground against the hegemony and won the right to exist. Now they would face the true masters of the galaxy. Humanity had chosen to remain human while wielding the power of gods. Whether that choice would save them or destroy them remained to be seen. The stars awaited, filled with wonders and terrors beyond imagination. And humanity, stubborn and determined as always, would face them as themselves.